When I mentioned my daughter-in-law, Charlotte, Kyle fell silent. Then he let out a big sigh.
Charlotte didn't pick up the phone. And she hasn't been to your house, right?
Well, but she does send me $10 every month. I use it to buy snacks for the caregiver. When I said that, Kyle burst out laughing.
Come on, Mom. You gotta be kidding me.
Why was Kyle laughing? What do you mean, kidding?
The amount is way off. I told Charlotte to send $1,000 every month.
$1,000? Hold on a second. I couldn't believe what Kyle was saying, so I rushed to grab my bank statement. I checked the amount, and sure enough, it was only $10 a month. It really is $10 a month. That's what I thought it was supposed to be. On the other end of the phone, Kyle was clearly shaken. I could hear him muttering something to himself.
Sorry, I need to think about this. I'll call you back. Can you send me a photo of that bank statement? I just want to double check.
Got it, I'll send it right away.
All right, talk later.
With that, he hung up. I had no idea what was going on, but something about it didn't sit right with me. I went ahead and took a picture of the bank statement and sent it to Kyle. Not long after, Kyle called me back right away.
Mom, I'm sorry. I'll be coming home next month, so I'll give you the money in person. I've already talked to Charlotte about it.
I'm happy you're coming back, but what's going on?
I want to explain, but I just can't right now. Just wait for now, okay? There's nothing to worry about.
With that, Kyle abruptly hung up. My name is Angela. Right now, I'm sitting in front of a picture praying. In the framed photo before me, my husband is smiling. How many decades have passed since he left us? I've grown old, but in that picture, he remains forever young, smiling as always. Beside me, praying, is my son, Kyle. I raised him all on my own. My life was never easy, and with my busy work schedule, he must have felt lonely at times. Even so, Kyle always took the initiative. He made lunch for both of us, helped with cleaning and laundry, and did whatever he could around the house. Because of that, I was able to focus on my work. Kyle, congratulations on graduating from college.
Mom, I should be the one thanking you for raising me all these years. I'll work hard from now on, so you can take a break.
Yes, today is Kyle's college graduation ceremony. These 22 years felt both long and short. Now that Kyle is stepping into adulthood, I finally feel like a weight has been lifted from my shoulders. Working hard is great, but make sure to take care of yourself, okay? Ever since Kyle started working, I found myself feeling a bit bored. I had already retired from my job, and since I had always been a workaholic, I didn't really have any friends. Staying home all the time wasn't good for my health, and more than anything, I was worried about my finances for the future. So I decided to take on a part-time job. That's how Kyle and I each started our new lives. A few years passed, and then one day,
Mom, you don't have any plans next Sunday, right?
Not really. Do you need me to do something? Kyle scratched his head, his face turning a little red.
Actually, there's someone I want you to meet. Sorry for the short notice, but can you?
Seeing how nervous he was, I couldn't help but chuckle a little. Of course, you found someone special, haven't you? I'm looking forward to it.
I never said that.
You don't have to, I can tell. For the next few days, I was surprised at how excited I felt. At the same time, the thought of Kyle starting a new life away from me made me feel a little lonely. With those mixed emotions, the promised day arrived. Kyle arrived right on time and brought her with him.
I'd like to introduce you. This is Charlotte.
Nice to meet you. I'm Charlotte, and I'm dating Kyle.
Charlotte had a very modern, trendy look. Her hairstyle and makeup were styled after popular artists, and she wore cute, fashionable clothes. At first glance, she seemed a bit flashy and carefree. But since Kyle had always been the quiet type, I figured someone as lively and cheerful as Charlotte might be a good match for him. And in reality, she wasn't shy around me at all. She excitedly showed me her phone screen and passionately talked about her favorite artists. Once we all felt completely comfortable, Kyle turned to me and said, "I'm planning to marry Charlotte." I had no reason to object. Before long, Kyle and Charlotte got married and moved into their new home, just 15 minutes away from mine. I had assumed I would be living alone from then on. But one day, Charlotte suddenly came to my house and said, "Please teach me how to cook." Even if you ask me all of a sudden, I'm not that great at it myself.
But you're still way better than me. I have no idea where to even start. Kyle is always busy, so I really want to learn how to cook on my own.
Charlotte's big eyes welled up with tears as she clenched her hands together, pleading with me. Honestly, I was busy with my part-time job, but seeing how much my daughter-in-law was relying on me, I couldn't just turn her away. "All right, I'll teach you everything I can."
Thank you so much.
Charlotte's eyes lit up with excitement. From then on, I started teaching her how to cook at her house. I showed her how to pick out good ingredients at the grocery store, how to shop smart and save money, and how to plan meals efficiently. To make sure I wasn't teaching her anything wrong, I even studied cookbooks in advance. It reminded me of when Kyle was little, standing in the kitchen beside me, and I couldn't help but smile. It felt like I had gained a daughter, and my days became lively and full of joy. But those happy days didn't last long. At first, Charlotte seemed eager to learn. She took notes on everything I said, and even recorded videos on her phone when the cooking steps got too complicated. But after about a month, Charlotte seemed to lose interest, and she stopped taking notes and just stood there, staring blankly. Even when I carefully explained things to her, she would only give half-hearted responses. Worse yet, while I was cooking, she would pull out her phone and say, "My favorite artist is doing a live stream," then just stare at the screen. Normally, I might have scolded her for that kind of behavior. But around that time, I was exhausted, not only from my busy part-time job, but also from studying cooking, something I normally never did, so I didn't even have the energy to scold her. In the end, I found myself responsible for both my own household chores and making meals for Kyle and Charlotte. Still, I never complained and kept cooking. I told myself this was my way of making up for all the years I spent focused on work, unable to do much for Kyle. But sadly, I was older than I thought. As the busy days went by, my body slowly stopped keeping up with me. Then one day, while working as usual, I was suddenly hit by a wave of intense dizziness. My coworkers called out to me, but before I could respond, I collapsed right there. I could faintly hear people shouting, "Call an ambulance!" As their voices faded into the distance, my vision went completely black. How many days had passed? When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was an unfamiliar ceiling. My mind felt foggy as I tried to think. I was lying in a hospital bed, tubes running all over my body. What on earth had happened to me? When I moved my eyes slightly, I saw Kyle sitting in a chair beside me, breathing softly in his sleep. Seeing Kyle there gave me a small sense of relief, but as I tried to call out to him, I was hit with a shock. I wanted to ask him what had happened to me, but my tongue felt numb and it wouldn't move. I can't speak. What's going on? Panic started creeping in, and when I tried to sit up, I realized my entire left side was numb and wouldn't move. Not knowing what had happened to my body, my anxiety quickly turned into sheer terror. Kyle, help me. As I struggled desperately with my unresponsive body and numb tongue, Kyle finally woke up.
You're awake. Thank God. I'll go get the doctor. Just hang in there.
Saying that, he rushed out of the room. In the meantime, all I could do was stare blankly at the ceiling. Thinking about what would happen to me from now on, I felt like my anxiety was crushing me. Kyle quickly returned with the doctor. The doctor, an older man with a kind expression, made me feel a little more at ease.
I'm relieved to see you've regained consciousness.
I tried to sit up again, but before I could, the doctor gently raised his hand to stop me.
Please don't push yourself. I need you to stay calm and listen carefully. Based on the test results, Angela, you've had a stroke.
A stroke. I couldn't process what he was saying right away, but slowly, a sense of despair began to take over me.
That being said, the fact that you collapsed at work was a small stroke of luck. They were able to give you emergency treatment immediately, so it didn't become life-threatening.
But my body. I struggled to move my numb tongue, forcing out my words. Hearing how unrecognizable my voice had become, Kyle stood behind the doctor, silently shedding tears. But even as he listened to my broken words, the doctor's gentle expression didn't waver.
Please don't worry. It may be difficult right now, but with rehabilitation, you will improve.
I see. Kyle, unable to hold back anymore, grabbed my hand tightly.
Mom, rehab might be tough, but I'll help you through it. We'll get through this together.
Hearing Kyle's desperate plea, my own tears began to fall. But at that moment, a question popped into my mind. Where's Charlotte? Kyle averted his gaze.
She went to a concert, but please don't hold it against her.
I wasn't planning to blame her, but he looked guilty saying it. And with that, my rehabilitation journey began. At first, my therapy started with simply bending my unresponsive arms and legs with the help of an occupational therapist. On his days off, Kyle would come to the hospital and assist with my rehabilitation. Charlotte also visited, but she would mostly just watch while Kyle did everything. My rehabilitation was grueling, an endless cycle of painful, exhausting sessions. But thanks to everyone's support, I gradually regained the ability to speak more clearly than before. Finally, after 6 months, I was told I could be discharged. I had to accept life in a wheelchair, but even so, I felt fortunate. It could have been worse. On the day of my discharge, both Kyle and Charlotte came to pick me up. However, I couldn't help but notice that Kyle's expression seemed unusually tense. After saying my goodbyes to the doctors and occupational therapists, who had taken care of me. I finally returned home for the first time in months, only to find the house impeccably clean and organized. Not only that, but handrails and ramps had been newly installed. Did Kyle do all this?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure things were as easy as possible for you.
Kyle scratched his head for a while, then, as if making up his mind, finally spoke.
So, Mom, I know things will be tough for you for a while. That's why I want us to live together.
Live with me. What about your house?
We're giving it up.
His sudden decision left me speechless. Given my condition, having someone nearby would definitely be a relief. But was it really okay for me to ruin my young son's married life because of my situation? Besides that, there was something else that worried me. I glanced over at Charlotte. Her eyes were glued to her phone, not listening to what we were saying. She was probably watching something about that artist she was obsessed with. I couldn't shake the feeling about how Charlotte had once asked me to teach her how to cook, only to do nothing and leave all the household chores to me. I had no intention of blaming her for it, but I couldn't help but wonder if I could trust her.
You're okay with this, right? Mom, I'll do anything for you.
Thank you, that means a lot to me, but… As I hesitated, unsure of what to say, Charlotte finally looked up from her phone.
Kyle, your mom just got discharged today. It's a bit much to hit her with this right away, don't you think?
Kyle looked taken aback, as if he hadn't expected her to say that.
Yeah, I get that. But this is something we need to decide quickly, right?
It's an important decision, which is exactly why we need to take our time and talk it through properly. You can't just make plans without involving her.
Charlotte was sharper than I had given her credit for. Even so, Kyle wasn't willing to back down from his decision.
Listen, my dad is gone, and we don't have any relatives we can rely on. Who else is going to take care of Mom?
Their argument grew more intense, and I found myself unable to step in. I wanted someone by my side, but I didn't want to be a burden. That contradiction weighed heavily on me.
You say you'll take care of her, but aren't you about to leave for an overseas business trip? Am I supposed to take care of her alone while you're gone?
That's why I already asked you to handle it.
But I can't do it. That's why it's best to leave it to professionals.
Charlotte's words made both of us stop and think.
I don't want to leave Angela alone either. But I have no experience with caregiving, and I know it would be difficult. So why don't we hire a professional caregiver, and we'll cover the cost?
Charlotte's unexpected suggestion took me by surprise. It was true that hiring a caregiver would ease my uneasy feelings. Kyle would be able to focus on his job without worrying. It would cost some money, but it truly seemed like the best option. Kyle crossed his arms, deep in thought. Charlotte stood with her hands on her hips, looking rather pleased with herself.
A caregiver? Yeah, I guess leaving it to a professional is a solid idea. Mom, what do you think?
I agree. I don't want to disrupt your lives. In the end, Charlotte's idea was the one we went with. I was honestly surprised that she had suggested hiring a caregiver. Up until now, I had assumed she didn't really care about me at all. I felt ashamed for having doubted Charlotte just moments ago. From there, Kyle and Charlotte continued their discussion, deciding on which caregiver to hire. Finally, Kyle would cover the cost, and a professional caregiver would be brought in to help. Since Kyle had work to focus on, Charlotte was put in charge of managing the finances.
All right, Angela. I'll personally make sure the payments are handled responsibly.
Charlotte curled her lips into a smile. Just as Kyle had said, he soon left for his long-term overseas assignment. Charlotte kept her promise and deposited money into my account for the caregiver. However, the amount was only $10, a very small sum. Still, no matter how little it was, I was in no position to earn money myself anymore. Besides, I had my savings from years of working, along with my insurance, so it wasn't a problem. More than anything, I appreciated the thoughtfulness behind even a small contribution. So, I decided to use that money to buy small thank you treats for my caregiver. And the caregiver who came to my house was truly wonderful. She was always attentive to my condition and willingly helped me with my rehabilitation. Charlotte never came to my house, but with the caregiver taking care of me, I never felt lonely. Plus, since the caregiver was close to my age, we got along as if we had known each other for years. When she realized my daughter-in-law never visited, she even started stopping by outside of work just to check in on me. But no matter how close we became, she never crossed any professional boundaries. That sense of balance only made me trust her more. At first, I was overwhelmed by my physical limitations, but over time, I had completely adjusted. In fact, thanks to my caregiver, my days were even more enjoyable than before. Those happy days passed by in the blink of an eye, and one morning, 6 months after my discharge, as I was having breakfast, I received a call from Kyle.
Hello? It's Kyle. Has anything changed since we last talked? Are you managing okay?
Kyle's voice sounded a bit tired. I've been living happily, thanks to you. My caregiver is a wonderful person.
That's good to hear. I've been worried about that for a while.
Hearing my voice must have reassured him because I could hear him exhale deeply over the phone. What about you? Work sounds tough.
It is. I was confident in my Russian, but real-life conversations are on a whole different level.
You'll get used to it eventually. Maybe being a little pushy would actually help. For a while, we continued chatting and laughing. Well, mostly, it was Kyle venting about work. Then, suddenly, a question crossed my mind. I love talking with you, but have you called Charlotte yet? The moment I mentioned Charlotte, Kyle fell silent. Then, he let out a long sigh.
Charlotte didn't pick up. She's probably at some concert or something. She hasn't been by your place either, has she?
Well, yeah, but she does send me $10 every month. I use it to buy tea and snacks for the caregiver. When I said that, Kyle burst into loud laughter.
Mom, come on. You're joking, right?
But I didn't understand why he was laughing. What do you mean joking?
The amount is way off. I told Charlotte to send $1,000 every month.
$1,000? Wait a second. I couldn't believe what Kyle was saying, so I hurried to grab my bank statement. I checked the balance, and sure enough, it was only $10 a month. It's definitely $10. That's what I've been getting. Kyle was clearly shaken on the other end of the call. I could hear him muttering to himself.
Mom, I need to think about this. Can you send me a picture of the bank statement? I just want to double check.
All right, I'll send it right away.
Okay, we'll talk later.
With that, Kyle hung up. I had no idea what was going on, but something about it didn't sit right with me. I went ahead and took a picture of the bank statement and sent it to Kyle. Not long after, he called me back.
Mom, I'm so sorry. I'll be coming home next month, and I'll give you the money in person. I've already talked to Charlotte about it.
I'm happy you're coming back, but what's going on?
I want to explain, but I can't right now. Just wait for now, okay? There's nothing to worry about.
With that, Kyle abruptly hung up. A month passed, and I was still feeling uneasy about the situation. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from Charlotte. It was a rare occurrence. I assumed she was planning some kind of surprise for Kyle's return and eagerly answered the phone. But to my surprise, Charlotte was sobbing uncontrollably.
Angela, it's terrible.
Wait, what happened? Calm down.
Please, you have to stop Kyle.
What do you mean? I tried my best to soothe Charlotte, but her crying only grew worse. On top of that, nothing she was saying made any sense. It wasn't even a real conversation. Why do I need to stop Kyle?
He's going to be so mad. I can't explain, but please, tell him not to come back to the US.
Since I wasn't getting anywhere with her, I decided to end the call and dial Kyle instead. Fortunately, he picked up right away. When I mentioned Charlotte, Kyle simply said, "I will explain everything when we meet tomorrow." And then, the next day arrived. Kyle and Charlotte came to my house together. Charlotte looked sulky and refused to meet my eyes. But as soon as we reached the living room, Kyle told her to apologize. Though clearly unhappy about it, Charlotte lowered her head in front of me.
Angela, I'm truly sorry.
Then, without hesitation, Kyle began explaining everything.
I originally told Charlotte to give you the money in person, both to help with your expenses and to check in on you. That's why I transferred an extra $1,000 into our household account every month. Right, Charlotte?
That's correct.
She responded, still keeping her head down.
But in reality, instead of handing over the $1,000, she only deposited $10 into your account. So, Charlotte, where did the rest of that money go?
I spent it on concert tours.
Concerts cost that much?
Well, I wanted to follow the entire national tour, and my sister Melanie wanted to come too, so it added up.
Charlotte showed no sign of guilt, and she just pouted like a child caught misbehaving.
You didn't just go to concerts. You splurged on luxury hotels at every stop, didn't you?
At Kyle's words, Charlotte shot him a glare.
So what? I have the right to travel too.
Shut up. If that's what you wanted, you should have just been honest. You spent the money that was meant for Mom's caregiver. What would you have done if something had happened to her?
Charlotte didn't respond. She just lowered her head again. So Charlotte, you had no idea Kyle was coming back to the US?
Of course not. I came back so suddenly, so she was caught completely off guard.
That's right. Kyle hadn't told Charlotte he was returning. Not only had Kyle suddenly returned to the US, but he also told Charlotte, "This time, I'm handing over the money in person." That sent Charlotte into a panic. Because by then, there was no money left in the account to cover her credit card payments. Desperate, Charlotte tried to steal the $1,000 from Kyle's bag when he wasn't looking. But even that was part of Kyle's trap. He had secretly recorded the entire thing. With that video, along with the photo of my bank statement, Charlotte had no choice but to confess everything. As Kyle recounted Charlotte's wrongdoing, I could see tears forming in his eyes. It was understandable that he had been betrayed by someone he trusted. Seeing that, I couldn't help but feel heartbroken as well. But Charlotte remained sullen, her expression unchanged. She kept glancing at the clock, as if impatient for this to be over. Kyle finally lost his temper.
Charlotte, what's with that attitude? You did all of this. Don't you feel even a little sorry for my mom?
Charlotte let out a loud, annoyed sigh.
Oh, just give it a rest already. You're so damn annoying. It's always, mom this, mom that. I'm sick of it.
What did you just say? What's wrong with caring about my mom?
It is a problem. We got married and all you ever talked about was your mom. You never paid any attention to me. You're a grown man and you're still a mama's boy. It's disgusting.
Kyle's face turned bright red. He looked like he was about to snap, so I quickly stepped in. That's enough. Both of you stop it.
But, Mom.
It's fine, but Charlotte, you might be right. Maybe Kyle didn't give you enough attention. But what about you?
What are you trying to say?
Aren't you the one who's been obsessing over some artist like a teenager? You were always glued to your phone. What about that? Charlotte's expression faltered.
What the hell? That makes no sense. Whatever. You two can enjoy your little happy life together.
With those parting words, Charlotte stormed out of the house as if she were fleeing. Kyle didn't chase after her this time.
Mom, I'm really sorry.
Don't worry about it. A lot of good things came out of this too. Kyle and I looked at each other and couldn't help but burst into laughter. That day, Kyle stayed with me. It had been years since we had spent time together like that. Even though I now lived in a wheelchair, I was able to enjoy the same happiness as before. And that was enough for me. However, this incident ultimately led to Kyle and Charlotte getting divorced. I had encouraged them to reconcile, but then an even bigger problem came to light. The amount Charlotte had spent following her favorite artist was far greater than what was missing from my caregiver funds. So where had all that extra money come from? It turned out she had been selling Kyle's personal belongings to fund her obsession. As if that weren't bad enough, an even more shocking truth came to light. Charlotte's sister, Melanie, had also gone through a divorce in the past, using the exact same scheme. She had been ordered to pay alimony, but instead of using her own money, she had secretly withdrawn it from Kyle's account. When I heard that, I was so shocked I couldn't even speak. At that moment, I realized there was no way I could defend Charlotte any longer. If Kyle had stayed married to her, she would have eventually taken everything from him. After the divorce, Kyle moved in with me.
What a nightmare. Who sells someone else's belongings to follow a band around?
Well, I guess for some people, that's just how much they love their favorite artists. But the divorce went through without any issues, right?
Yeah, of course. I have all the evidence. I also filed for damages and alimony. But honestly, I doubt she'll be able to pay.
After that, we completely lost contact with Charlotte, so I have no idea what became of her. From what Kyle heard, she and Melanie were now living together in a run-down apartment. Instead of supporting each other as sisters, they spent their days blaming each other while desperately trying to make money. But that was no longer our concern. Kyle's overseas assignment eventually ended, and he returned to the US for good. His job kept him busy as always, but he still took care of me whenever he could. My caregiver remained just as wonderful as before, always looking out for me. That alone made me feel incredibly fortunate, but there was one more thing that made me happy. The first time Kyle met my caregiver, they started talking and made an interesting discovery. Her daughter happened to work at the same company as Kyle, and she was one of his junior colleagues. What a small world. But the surprises didn't stop there. It turned out that my caregiver's daughter had feelings for Kyle. She had kept them to herself while he was married, but now that he was single again, she had started making her move. These days, she often comes over to my house, helping Kyle with chores as they spend more and more time together. Neither I nor my caregiver had any objections to their relationship. She was a wonderful woman, and we got along so well. I was sure our children would too. When I first had my stroke and ended up in a wheelchair, I had no idea how I would manage. But in the end, I became happier than I had ever been before. Now, I simply look forward to seeing what my future holds for these two young people.